Hi everybody, it's Christopher and welcome to Life's Not Over, It Just Looks Different, the YouTube channel. On today's video, I want to talk about something that I've been teasing about for a little while now, and that is driving. I loved driving. From the time I got my license when I was 16 years old, I was always behind the wheel and going somewhere, whether it was driving around the city with my friends or making road trips to different parts of Canada and even a few trips down into the States. I loved being behind the wheel. When I moved to Toronto in the early 2000s, I also developed a huge love of local auto racing because there were so many tracks that were just a couple of hours drive from Toronto in many different directions that there was always somewhere to go and check out racing, and I loved it, and to the point where I was actually thinking of getting my racing license. But then the stroke hit, the surgery and then the stroke and the subsequent eyesight loss. And when I woke up from that, all I could see was light and shadow. So that put an end to driving. Interestingly though, the surgeon didn't pull my driver's license. And I was really glad that he didn't, because it was still a great form of identification. I mean, when you go to a bank or you go somewhere else where they need to see your ID, what is the first thing they ask for? Your driver's license. So I was really glad that the surgeon didn't pull it. And I look back on it and I think, he probably didn't pull it because he might have thought I'd been through sort of enough mental trauma already with the stroke and the eyesight loss that pulling my license at that time was sort of, one more blow that maybe he didn't think I could take. He's probably right. Fast forward though to 2010, and it was time to renew my driver's license because I had actually renewed it the last time just 2 weeks before the surgery that cost me my sight. So 5 years later, in 2010, it was time to renew my license, but I thought for sure they would pull it because I thought, well, my eyesight didn't improve enough, I'm not driving, they're not gonna let me renew it. But I thought, it's still a really good piece of ID, so I'm going to try it anyway and see what happens. So I got the form in the mail to renew my license, and on page 2 of the form it said, "Is there anything that might inhibit your ability to drive?" And I was very honest, and in block letters, because that's the way I print these days, in block letters on that form, I wrote legally blind. And I went down to the ministry office and I handed them my form, handed them my credit card, and 2 weeks later, I got a driver's license in the mail. But I was still smart enough not to use it. It was still, again, just a really great piece of ID to have. One interesting story about that, though, when I did have my driver's license, I did actually go to the bank at one point where I was making some changes to one of my accounts, and without even thinking about it, the person I was dealing with at the bank, she kind of knew me, but without even thinking about it, she asked for my driver's license and I handed it to her. And as she was walking down the hall to go make a photocopy of it, she stopped, turned around, looked at me and said, "Why does a guy who's legally blind have a driver's license?" So I told her the story that I'm telling you now. Anyway, like I said, I was smart enough not to use it, and I just knew that, because I wasn't seeing colors very well, I was not able to, I knew that my reaction time was not good enough. If somebody was to come out, an animal, a child, a person, whatever, was to get out in front of the car, my reaction time wasn't there, so I knew not to drive. In 2012, when I moved to Alberta, I still thought, I still wanted to have the piece of ID. But when I went to the registry office here in Alberta, I was going to need to pass an eye test in order to change my license over. And I learned that telling them I had 2 eyes just wasn't going to cut it. They actually wanted them to work. Funny, whatever. So I had to give up my driver's license, and even though I hadn't driven in 7 years, that still was not an easy thing to do. Just like I said, for that piece of ID. But what I learned was that Alberta has a thing called the Alberta Identification Card, which is as widely accepted as a driver's license because it's issued by the provincial government. So I was okay with giving up my license because I knew that I'd have another piece of ID that I could use that nobody was going to quibble with. I did say that I was no longer driving, right? That might not be 100% true. I also mentioned that I like to go-kart race a lot. I was doing it competitively for a while and really enjoyed it. And a year and a half after my sight loss, I had recovered some of my sight and was doing better. And I got to a point where I thought, you know what? I want to try go-kart racing again. And there was an indoor track a little bit north of Toronto that I liked going to when I was racing all over the place. So a year and a half after my sight loss, I got together with a couple of friends and we all went to the go-kart track. Now, my spouse and my friend's spouse, they sat off to the sidelines. They didn't want to race, but my friend and I, we decided to go for it. And I put on my helmet, put on my gloves, got in the cart. I took the first couple of laps kind of moderate speed just to sort of learn the track layout and see how things would go. And after 1 or 2 laps of going around at a moderate speed, I picked up the pace and I was flying. I wasn't crashing into anything. I wasn't running over anybody. I lapped my friend more than once. And I had an absolute blast. It was such a good time, and it felt so good to be able to do that again. It was just such a good feeling. On a few occasions, I've had friends say that they want to go go-kart racing with me, and very often they would say that they think that they could beat me. But driving a car and driving a go-kart are very different. And it's a very different feel and a very different experience. So very often these friends that have gone out with me have found that I'm very fast and I'm very good at this go-kart thing, even with less eyesight. Because what I've learned is that once I take a couple of laps at a relatively moderate speed and figure out the track layout, after that it becomes more of a memory game. Because I remember that going into this turn, I need to be on this side of the turn, and going into that turn, I need to be over here. And so I figure these things out from memorizing the layout, and then I can go. So I still do very well for myself. In fact, the most recent time that I was in a go-kart track was just about 3 weeks ago. It was my birthday, and I was asked, what do I want to do for my birthday? I want to go go-kart racing. So that's what I did. Did 3 races, and I did really well. I didn't crash into anything, didn't run over anybody, passed lots of people, and ran 3 races that day. The first one I was a little slow, probably still learning the track layout. But the next 2 races, I wasn't the fastest person on the track, but I also wasn't the slowest. And I think when it was all said and done, I think I placed 4th or 5th in each race, but I was only 0.3 of a second off of the leader's pace. So I was doing okay, and it's really nice. Like I said at the beginning, I mean, I loved driving, so this gives me that little taste of driving when I need it. I still get to go out and do this, and I enjoy it, and nobody gets hurt, and I get to have that little bit of that life back. That's it for this video on my experience with driving. I want to thank you very much for watching. If you are new to these videos, welcome. It's nice to have you, and I hope that you'll click subscribe and join me on this journey, because I've got many more videos I want to share. And if you've seen these videos before and you've already subscribed, thank you so much for doing so. I really appreciate it. And I'd love it if you'd click like down below and let YouTube know that you like this video. I want to thank you very much for watching today, and I hope you have a wonderful day.